Nahida's Story Quest Part 2 opens a lot of mysterious tales about the world beyond and the world before the reign of Celestia. And today, let's shift our focus to the central pieces of the board and ask the important question: what do the Archons really know about Celestia? Because as shallow as this question seems, each of the Archons have their own way of coping through their silence, or sometimes lack thereof. So I want to investigate further into all the four of them. What have they said so far about Celestia? How willing are they to open up? And how much do they know about their inner workings? Let's start with a character that has been very open with her knowledge, for better or for worse. Nahida's reset creates a lot of empty spaces and void in her memory, but what is fascinating about how Nahida talks to the traveler about the world is that she doesn't willingly hide anything from them. She has been as honest and generous as she could be with information about the Cataclysm, about the sibling, and about the universe beyond Tevat. This is partly because she's connected to the Irminsul, hence privy to a lot more information than the other Archons just out of principle of book intelligence. But what differentiates Nahida as a person is that she knows a lot of things, but she hasn't experienced a lot of events. She's read or seen about the Cataclysm, but almost like if you and I were to read about the World Wars. Nahida's consciousness connection to the Greater Lord wasn't a perfect transmission of memories and emotions, meaning that Nahida herself is still experientially a blank state, something that she acknowledges frequently in her character's story quests as a lapse of remembrance. And this is why I believe she's very open to talking about Celestia in a way that the other Archons aren't. It's because she hasn't experienced the might of Celestia firsthand, or at least doesn't remember having any fear of Celestia at all. It's not to say that she doesn't respect them, of course. Nahida is intelligent, but she treats Celestia more like a concept rather than an actual entity she knows or has seen. When you observe how Nahida talks or divulges information, she hardly puts a filter on herself in the same way that the other Archons do, and even gives up vital information for her cause, like how the heavenly principles are currently dormant, or even about the Descenders. And it's not to say that she could be blamed. This is practically the first time she's truly ever been a god, considering she's been in captivity for centuries. As for the God of Wisdom, I can definitely see this being a mirror into how she believes that as long as information is divulged and used altruistically, there is no need for censorship. An ideal that definitely goes against Celestia's oath of secrecy and censorship, something that she will definitely have to witness and learn the hard way, the same way the other gods did. What Nahida knows and could as someone connected to the Irminsul is massive, but she hasn't experienced looking through everything all at once. It's like having access to a massive library of information, but you're not done reading all the books yet. I believe that Nahida is our best bet into understanding the divine, as evidenced by how Sumeru seems to be so interwoven with different reveals about the Nails, Celestia, and the time before the gods, and how Nahida herself seems to be. And because she doesn't seem to have that same fear or insistence to secrecy as the rest of the other Archons woven into her, she's the traveler's best source of information about almost all of the concepts of Tevat. But I wonder if one day she'll come to understand why the other Archons are afraid. As the goddess of eternity, A is in a unique position to share an ideal that is very closely rooted in the fundamentals of the heavenly principles. Her ideal was described by Zhongli as being the closest, and this is not without evidence. Eternity is considered by Celestia as the ultimate unquestionable facet in Tevat, and A upholds that with almost blind ideology to a very sincere regard. And it's because of this that her attitude towards information about Celestia can be multifaceted. She's at the perfect middle ground of upholding her secrecy as an Archon by being aware of the power that Celestia holds over her silence, but also has the empathy, as a sibling, to open up to the traveler to the best of her abilities without crossing the line of what she can say. She gives the information much gentler, and doesn't exactly just shut off the conversation entirely or try to steer away from it. She has been as open as she could be regarding the Cataclysm, discussing what had happened in Inazuma from her point of view, and even delineating about the powers of one of the four shades during her Archon quest. A's voice lines, for example, hint at something quite fascinating during the Cataclysm that we ourselves don't know about. But there's still a very tangible fear in how she responds when asked about Celestia. She knows the limits of what she can say, oftentimes giving consolation instead. But her fears are best materialized during the establishment of the Vision Hunt Decree, where she grew afraid of what happened in Conria and was afraid that that would happen should Inazuma progress too far. However, if we were to theorize about how much A knows about Celestia and their existence in a land before, A part of me almost thinks that she's the least informed out of all the 3 current Archons. She's isolated from the Gnosis for much longer ago than the other 3. She's expressed confusion and loss when discussing matters about the Traveler's origins of being a star, and she admitted that she wasn't directly there during the fall of Conria and only arrived after her sister already perished. Now, that isn't to say that she knows absolutely nothing, of course. She's a god, and existed alongside the original 7. She's definitely privy to all forms of information, but I think that just as a character, she was much more distant from divine politics compared to her sister. Given her unique position of not really having a direct outlet of information like Nahida, or not individually having a direct connection to the heavenly principles that we know so far, A might not be our best bet when asking about the gods, further simply because she doesn't know a whole lot. Even she admits it herself, and apologizes for it during her character's story quest. But where A does shine is in her empathy and her willingness to help the Traveler to the best of her abilities by bending the rules a bit. She is still an Archon with knowledge about the heavenly principles and the existence of the 4 shades, as well as her nation being connected to one of the 4 most fascinating ancient civilizations in the world. A is also privy to knowledge about ancient technology, as we know from her expertise in puppet-making techniques that stemmed from Conrian origins. Zhongli himself is a steadfast individual who honors contracts above everything else. One of these contracts is his oath to the heavenly principles, regarding secrecy of the events 500 years ago. When asked about the sibling, Zhongli says that he can't say much. Out of all the Archons, Zhongli is one of the most honest and resolute when it comes to his secrecy, and will shut down any coercion in attempts to ask. But it's nice to theorize what he could possibly be hiding. As the oldest of the 7 Archons, Zhongli lived through when the principles that shaped Devat were born, and even when the authority was given through all the Archons. The core difference between himself and Nahida is that Zhongli's experience and thoughts created the ideals and fundamentals that pilot his judgment as a god, something that Nahida doesn't have because of her lapses in memory and her youth. This includes his subtle but concrete apprehension towards Celestia and the divine. But that's not to say that Zhongli is unempathetic to the Traveler's cause, of course. Zhongli has been nothing but apologetic about his situation, and does try to skirt his way through it with metaphors and vague words of wisdom. Besides, it's not like he's completely unfounded. If I saw civilization get cursed into monsters and absolutely nuked by the power of God, I too would be pretty scared not keeping the legally binding pinky promise. Now, I think it would be pretty weird of me not to discuss the Zhongli Descender theory just a little bit, so here's how it basically goes. The Zhongli Descender theory stems from the reworded change in his character's story, in which the line acknowledges that 5 of the original 7 Archons have departed. If Zhongli was truly a creature of Devat, why would he have known that 5 of the original 7 have departed when Boomer's altercations for everyone is that she had always been the Archon since the very beginning? This is not a theory of mine, and it's been circulating around ever since 3.3, so it's a very fascinating perspective, all things considered. But whether or not Zhongli is a descender, or just an exception to the Irminsul overriding, or maybe the alteration was a misinterpretation, it doesn't really matter since it's still very much possible that Zhongli actually knows what happened in Conria and with the sibling, this including the punishment that was given to the sibling during their journey and the monsterification of the nation. He even drops this fascinating line after he talks about witnessing and about the secrets forgotten. It is absolutely by no coincidence that Venti has never gotten a part 2 of his story quest. Venti himself is a character who constantly lies and hides secrets either for the harmless fun of it or to genuinely mask his true intentions. He is the most difficult character to read out of all the 4 Archons because he says so much, yet so little at the same time. And that's why psychoanalyzing Venti's intention and determining what he knows is almost impossible. But we do note that he has a hesitance in talking about Celestia, and just masks most of his uncertainty with ballads, jokes, and smiles. There is only a few moments when his mask genuinely cracks. Venti's unique role of not only being one of the oldest original Archons, but also direct companion to the God of Time leaves us with many questions on how much he knows and why he's so hesitant to share anything. When Vanessa asked him, he immediately just smiled and steered away from the conversation about Celestia. He's also very dismissive of Celestia as a topic and oftentimes just laughs at it. And even his motivation for losing his gnosis this way without using his full power is questionable. What's also really fascinating about this is that because of the new developments in 3.6, Venti and Devalin's friendships are put into scrutiny, considering that Devalin was once called by Endro as a bishop, and has been correlated or referenced during Apep's reveal. That begs the question of how much does Venti know not only about the gods, but also about the civilization before Celestia. And that's it for me today. Just a shallow dive into the psychology of each of the Archons, since I love seeing divine characters be psychoanalyzed into their more human features. Besides, there's 3 more Archons that we have to go through, and each of them seems to have varying levels of what they want to share and what they know. Fossil Lore could easily just be as tight-lipped about the Cataclysm, considering how uptight she is about the laws of the Tribunal and the Divine. But that's a story for another day. As more questionable things begin to pop up with the 3.6 update, expect no less than 4 other Celestia videos that are about to pop up from this channel, because by God, the gods will smite us all. Anyway, that's it for me today. My name is Aster, and thank you for chilling with me.